Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. You have reached twitch.tv/Geeks for Social Change. This evening, we're going to be doing another interview with a very interesting project for organizers and activists. I'm Sean Morley, the host, layperson, and mainly here to make sure none of the dials in front of me start flashing red. However, I'm joined by a small panel of Geeks for Social Change royalty. Emma and Kim are here. Would you like to say hello, introduce yourselves?
Shall I go first? Hello. My name's Emma. I am a long-time friend and collaborator and co-conspirator with various Geeks for Social Change things. I'm a graphic designer, that's my background. My current main hustle is that I lecture on MA Design for Data Visualization at the University of the Arts London, and so I'm super excited to be here tonight to talk about this it's a visualization of data. That's what I'm here for. So that's me. I'll pass over to Kim.
Hello, I'm Kim. So I am the founder and studio lead, I think is my title. I have had a very difficult Scorpio season, and I'm glad it's no longer Scorpio season. So I'm just happy to be here and do a nice thing for the end of the year. It's nice that a few people came. It's got very cold outside all of a sudden, huh? Just saw people in the chat moaning about that too. And yeah, my house is currently a building site, so I'm kind of perched a little bit. So I hope everyone can see and hear me okay. But nice to see you all.
And thanks to everyone who has joined us in the live chat. Hello, Twitchy Robin. Hello, Alice from online. Hello, Jambird. Hello, my katakana's pretty rusty. Ratariso. And is that what's that character? Is that the one for the Pacific Ocean? Anyway, hello, and thank you for the GIF. And of course, we are joined by Arbnor from Mapped, which, well, I'll let him describe it in full. But we're very excited to have them along and to talk about the project. Would you like to give yourself an intro and give people like the basic 101 on the project and what it does?
For sure, yes. Yeah. Firstly, thanks so much for having me. Yes, my name is Arbnor. I am one of the product designers for Mapped and also the tech cooperative Common Knowledge, who are sort of powering Mapped. I'm a graphic designer, I guess, graphic designer / product designer. And yeah, we've been working on this tool for a while now. And yeah, I'm excited to share it with everyone today.
So can you tell us, or can you give us the 101 on what Mapped is, the tool, for anyone who might not be familiar?
Sure. So I guess maybe it's worth starting with, I guess, the common knowledge side of things. So like I mentioned, it's the cooperative of technologists, designers, developers, researchers. And we've kind of been working, it was our sort of 6-year anniversary the other day. And we've been working in close proximity to organizers in the UK, whether that's like grassroots to sort of NGOs. And one of the solutions we found ourselves making constantly was like mapping solutions. And we thought we sort of saw opportunity to maybe consolidate all of these requests into some kind of powerful mapping tool for organizers. And yeah, we've gone away and we've built that. And it kind of is a tool that basically fits within sort of the organizing CRM ecosystem. So it integrates with MailChimp, Action Network, Google Sheets, and MailChimp, and it also allows you to upload CSV data as well. And yeah, you can take all of that data, which mostly exists in like sort of siloed sort of spreadsheet form, which is very hard to like pass that information. And we take that, we connect it to our tool, and then you're given this visual way of actually understanding this data. So that data could be something like member lists. So obviously organizations might have a newsletter, they might have a sort of Google sheet of all the people that that sort of community that are connected with their campaign. And yeah, if you look at it in Google Sheets, it's just going to be a list of like records with maybe postcodes, some kind of geographic information. And so yeah, like I mentioned, it's quite hard to parse. So you can take that, put it on a map, but then you can also take other kinds of data. So you might also have a Airtable of community centers, and you can sort of start creating a map with multiple data sources and start seeing like a geographic picture via this data, and then you can use that to make sort of informed decisions as an organizer, instead of being able to see stuff in the map. It really grounds it into some like geographic space. So yeah, I mean, everything I've mentioned so far is like point data, so like basically markers on the map, but then you can also start adding also add like area data. So you might have a data source which is deprivation data, and at maybe constituency level, and yeah, you might have your members, you might have your community centers, but then you can also start visualizing and creating sort of choropleths of the UK with regions, or in this case constituencies, colored by the level of like deprivation. So it's adding this extra layer of like context, and yeah, there's like multiple use cases. You could be working like right now we're working with a trade union who worked in a particular industry. I guess I could say the industry. I think they're fine with us like talking about what they're doing, but they work with game developers, and they have a list of all their members, and they also have another separate list of all the big game development studios across the UK. And what we've been able to do for them is be able to take that member list and basically create these sort of radiuses around the game studios, and sort of be able to filter and segment their lists, their big broad list of people across the UK, and sort of give them a breakdown of these are your members close to this game studio. So yeah, and maybe that's actually, I mean, at some point maybe I can demo this, and I'm trying to explain it in the abstract, which
So in terms of the function of Mapped, what was the inspiration that first motivated your team to create it? What was the problem it was trying to solve? Was it inspired by personal experiences, or something that a client or a third party asked you to develop? Where did it initially come from?
I guess like I mentioned, it mainly came from like, I guess, organizers using tools like Action Network, and I mean, this is like live and going out. I mean, we as a team, we have some critiques of these existing CRM platforms, especially regarding like their user experience and how sort of contemporary their tooling is. Obviously, with the nature of Action Network, they've been around for a long time. They have such a big market share. For them, they may not necessarily have an interest in trying to like innovate and maybe provide sort of solutions. From what I know, I think they do have like some kind of mapping solution within the tool, but it is like very limited. And yeah, it's basically, like I mentioned, working with like organizers who wanted some like a kind of like mapping tool, and to be able to like pass their information, like all of their data in a way which is like accessible, which is like obviously data visualization is a tool that you can use to take data outside of just seeing it in a list in a spreadsheet format, and be able to see patterns, to situate it in the real world. I think like in terms of like, we're really inspired, like our product ethos is that obviously like technology has a place. We are like tech people, but ultimately this is a tool which is actually trying to get people to connect with each other in the real world. So the members are real people, and like we have their postcodes or wherever the geographic data is, or the organizers, sorry, have that data, and yeah, they want to be able to see where they're located. They want to see what's around them, and they want to see how can they reach out to them. How can they create strategies which lead to like some kind of campaign objective? And most of the time, I keep going back to like the community center as an example of like a data set which you can connect. Like eventually, people using Mapped, or organizers using Mapped, will maybe arrange like a local event, and will bring all of the people together essentially. They're sort of on their lists in sort of the community center that they found in Mapped, which is close to them, and yeah, it's essentially, it's obviously, it's, like I mentioned, as we're tech people. Obviously, we want to create like we want people to use the tool digitally, but eventually, sort of the end of the user journey, let's say, is getting people, meeting together in community centers, or canvassing, or whatever the sort of end goal of the campaign is. Is that, hopefully that answers the question?
Yeah, I think so. Well, to check I'm following. So essentially there was a need for this amongst campaigners and organizers, and existing tools were just too inflexible or couldn't use all the different kinds of data they needed. There wasn't a versatile enough tool out there that would meet the needs. Is that?
I mean, I'd say we've certainly heard similar critiques of Action Network, so you don't need to be shy necessarily about critiquing those kind of tools.
I was just going to ask who the first 1, 2, 3 users of it were.
The first 1, 2, 3s. Okay, so that, I guess that's interesting. The first, we had a range of organizations in our cohort. I guess one of the primary ones was Hope Not Hate. So I think they had access to, I forget what the data was exactly, but and so like I should also say, Mapped has gone through like multiple versions or like iterations. So in one of the previous versions, as a part of the first cohort, we had Hope Not Hate doing really important work, and yeah, they basically wanted to combine, to interface their members, and then also have a map with a kind of data visualization, which I'm using the term chloropeth, which maybe doesn't mean much, but I can explain. I can visualize what that is in during the demo section, and sort of combine those two. I guess the other two, I don't know if this is like the chronological order. We're working with WGB game workers, and we're also one of the people involved in the cohort was also Pommark, which is another organization, and GND Rising. So they're all coming to me now. So yeah, a range of like mainly actually grassroots organizations, progressive organizations in the UK.
Any follow-ups to that, Kim?
No, that sounds really interesting. I think because obviously I think the first few clients you always get on a thing tend to like really shape the tool. So I guess I was, a bit curious on like the sort of chicken and egg side here, like where did your first like round of funding come from for this? Was it one of these organizations, or was it a few together, or?
So I think so. Thankfully, I think so I'm more involved on the design side rather than like the funding side. But I think what I can say is that we are lucky to have a strong relationship with some like philanthropic funders who are like working in partnership with like the organizations that we're trying to support. Many of them are grassroots organizations, so obviously have limited resources, and so I think we had the Roundtree Foundation, a few like funders, the Gower Street as well, if I'm not mistaken, which we're obviously very grateful for, because that sort of gave us the initial like, I was gonna say seed fund. It's a very like weird sort of tech term, but allowed us to sort of start building stuff and maybe sort of doing a sort of proof of concept. And they were also very good at just providing like the resources and letting the cohort and the organizations like make requests. So like I talk about like the sort of filling different, so in terms of like the choropleth feature, where you can pick a sort of
Could we
like
skip
a
ahead a little bit to a demo, do you think? I know we're talking
Well,
a lot
so
about it in the abstract. I know Emma's got some questions written out. But I
yeah.
wonder
So
if we
well,
should
my
just
next
start
question.
demonstrating.
Yeah, my next question was actually that I came to your launch party around a year ago, where you were sort of starting to talk about this. And I saw an amazing demo then, and yeah, I was going to ask you if you could show us a little bit of it now, sort of how much it's grown since then, I'm sure.
For sure, yes. Hopefully it's as amazing now as it was then.
Well, I was saying earlier before we started the stream, it was a room of about 30 or 40 people, and there was a moment where the whole audience did an audible gasp and then applauded.
Wow, okay.
I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on you there, but it's a very cool tool. So yeah, show us, please.
I will say that was a very choreographed demo. I made this like 10 minutes before coming on here. I should have done it before, granted.
It would be great.
I have to say that I heard a story about, I think it's actually someone in chat who told me when Ruby on Rails first launched, which is a huge platform now, they did a whole demo about how amazing it was, and it turned out they were just restarting the server every 5 minutes in the background because it kept crashing.
Oh yeah.
So
well,
I think you can fake it when you do a demo, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yep.
Nice. So what I'm showing you right now is like the blank sort of map that you get once you create a new map. So obviously you can see the map, but on the side here we have the layers panel, which has a few different sort of layer options. And so one is obviously members, and here you can choose from your data sources. So maybe maybe a later point I can show how this process will work, but there is sort of like a wizard where you can go through and connect your data sources to maps and then select from the data sources that you have connected. So let's say there's one called sample members, and what that's done is that's also automatically added all of the records, which there are 137 of them, and connected and is now showing me those members on the map, as well as giving me a table, sort of the standard view.
So can I chip in here, because just a tiny bit of context, which I love. So we're imagining here like maybe a small grassroots organization who have managed to get 137 people on their mailing list. They're sort of like, we are up for taking action. And before this existed, all you would have was a spreadsheet. And now it's like, oh, okay, I can see these hotspots, right? I can see.
Exactly. All you would have is something like this. And basically, it's a very simple, I mean, what I'm showing you right now, I guess, is a very simple tool where you also now have the shared interface of where you can geographically see where these members are. So we kind of have them as, from far away, you see them as heat maps. And then when you zoom in, you start seeing them as individual nodes. And then, you can hover over them. You can click on them, which opens a sort of inspector view, which shows you what's in your data set, but maybe in a more sort of, in case you have your sort of table closed, you can still sort of see the data in a bit more of a like human readable
I should
format.
just note, this is fake data. These are not real people. I should note for anyone curious.
Yeah. We should. I was nervous about accidentally. I mean, there is a chance that I could accidentally connect a data set, which I'm not meant to, which, hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah.
Just a little bit of peril. Just there, just to liven things up. Yeah.
And so, so those are members. You can also connect a collection of community centers, let's say. So that would be in the marker section. I don't know. Also, I should probably not be showing the data set, but let's say there was a data set. Maybe I can just add. I don't want to select one of these because it might be real data. Sorry, guys, I should have prepared. But you can connect that, and it will also show you the data, the geographic data that you've connected. You can also just add like manual pins. So if you know that something is here in Morden, you can select it and it automatically adds it to your markers, and you can give it sort of a readable name. Like,
so to give an example of the power of that, I saw that one of your data sets was like trans-friendly GPs, right? So conceivably, you could see in a different color those trans-friendly GPs, and you could see, or it could be trans-friendly MPs, for example, and you could see where your members are geographically close to those people, which would potentially like empower your members to be able to like understand where they are geographically and what they could potentially do.
Yeah, exactly. So I can actually use this trans-friendly GPs dataset because it is going to be publicly accessible
oh, great.
at a certain point. And like you say, so we have these two layers. I can see them sort of visually, like so, but I can also filter data from using other data. So let's say I've selected my sample members. Let's say I wanted to find a list of members that are close to, not this, sorry. Let me just pick a random one, this one. So this might take a while depending on the calculation it's making. Maybe I should have rehearsed this and picked one that was a simple calculation. But essentially what it is doing is...
yeah, that's what I was picturing, yeah.
Okay, so it should be filtering. Again, sorry, I should have...
No, this is still really interesting because it's seeing, now what we're seeing on here is those hotspots for that particular type of data set overlaid, as we now see with where members are.
Yes. I wonder if this way around will work. Okay, for some reason this way around is working. But essentially, what you can do is create like a catchment sort of area. So I've selected in the trans-friendly GPs dataset, I want to find trans-friendly GPs that are within 19 kilometers of this member, Willie Dustis. And yeah, there's some issues happening right now with the calculation, but it would filter, it would highlight it would filter this list of trans-friendly GPs to show just the GPs that are close to this member. So if, for example, that was what you needed to do, like you were speaking to one of your members, and you wanted to find out what their closest one a GP was, you could do it using this filtering.
Well, also, when you imagine a much larger member database, for example, getting into the thousands of members, it gives you the power potentially, right, to say, or, you know, if it was a different data set, like MPs who are opposed to the something bill, you know, you would then be able to email members in those areas and say, hey, write to your MP because they are this thing, right? It's that kind of intersection of data.
Exactly. So you could do it like the way I've done it now. The other way to approach sort of like what I'm describing right now is like segmenting your data. So you can do it via filtering via proximity to other sort of records in your data set. But we also have this other feature called area. So let's say you have a particular area in which your organization is active. You can sort of draw this like rough shape. And then again, hopefully this works. Filter, okay. This has worked in that it's reordered it. It should be filtering it. But yeah, you can also segment sort of geographic areas and sort of pick out and filter essentially massive data sets, like you said, and hone in on a particular area. Especially like when we talk to organizers, we find that like hyper localized campaigns are very like effective. And so having something like this where you can draw like very specific geographies yourself and sort of filter out loads of unnecessary data so you can make informed decisions is quite a powerful thing as well.
Can I ask the source of this data? Like, who's publishing this data set?
The trans-friendly GPs?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I can say.
Okay. It's just a resource that is very fraught, but maybe it's getting a bit sidetracked to get into it. But
yeah, sorry, I picked that one randomly off the list as I saw it. But yeah.
I mean, maybe I'll save some of. I've got like a Kim more critical sections later, but I think it's interesting to me. I think for me the interesting thing here is that record last updated, and kind of saying that, you know, that one at the top, if it's last been updated in 2014, that's kind of a really long time ago, and it sort of can put data in the same place as like a more recently updated one. So yeah, I've not really formed a very good question here, and someone just tried to call me who knows I'm streaming, which is a little bit annoying. But
publicly shaming them.
I don't know. I suppose I'm okay. I'm going to turn this into a question that's a bit less babbly. I think someone once suggested to me the idea that all community information is like a form of folklore. So you don't actually ever really know anything, but you can get a rumor that like someone heard something about a place that was good a little while ago. Right? And it's like, oh yeah, I heard such and such did a yoga class on a Wednesday. I'm not sure what happened to them. But it gives you like enough to go for. And I think when you're trying to find a GP, normally you're like going into your local mutual aid WhatsApp group and just asking around and getting like recent experiences directly from it. And I suppose I'm curious about this set, not because it doesn't need doing, because it's really ambitious to try and generate and maintain this kind of database. And maybe this is a bit outside the scope of the tool today, but I think a lot of my concerns sometimes with mapping techniques come down to sort of applying a kind of certainty to data that might not actually be there on the underlying data, if that makes sense.
For sure, absolutely, Kim. I think what you've highlighted there is kind of the key, I guess, part of this tool, which is kind of out of our hands. Like mapped is just kind of like we've described, it's kind of just like an interface layer in which it just shows you like data in a way which is hopefully A, works, and two, just has like quite a pleasant user experience. As we've mentioned, other tools don't spend time in like making something actually at the very least like usable, let alone like fun and enjoyable. But yeah, like what we found is, yeah, you can't sort of use data visualization to circumvent like poor data or like data that hasn't been maintained. We're fortunate to have relationships with organizations who have put a lot of time and energy in collating this data. So yeah, the trans-friendly one, trans-friendly GP. Matt, we're also working with a cohort of funders actually, I think spearheaded by AB Charitable Trust, where it's sort of a cohort of funders, and they're trying to work out, okay, where should we be sort of allocating resources? There's obviously, if you look at the political context we're in, like people are being sort of like, I guess, falling for like right-wing sort of reform narratives essentially, and maybe that there's a failure to try and reach out to people who maybe like, yeah, it seems like the funders want to make an active sort of decision and sort of redefine their strategy to try and reach those people. And thankfully, someone within their team, or it seems like a collection of them, have gotten together and created a very powerful data set, which is sort of aggregated and has a range of sources. And we kind of joke about it internally, but it's like the best data set that we've ever had to manage. It's like so clean. It has like the best practices involved, and that just makes our tool look and feel and it makes it it basically maximizes the potential of our tool, because the data feeding it, like you say, is like solid. And yeah, I think that's one of the challenges, like making sure, yeah, maybe that's like, I guess maybe I'm thinking as a product designer, maybe we should be highlighting when data records are like outdated, like you highlighted. But yeah, I think that's a good observation.
So can I follow up with a question about the sort of the data that will be used in the context of this tool. So it seems like if I was imagining myself as an organization who has a data set about my members, which maybe contains their, their names, their postcodes, location-based data, I can feed that into Mapped. Is the idea that you then will provide that sort of drop-down list of a wide range of other data sets that organizations can then draw upon? Or is the idea that actually essentially Mapped is a blank canvas, and if an organization was particularly interested in, for example, trans-friendly GPs, that is their data set to upload as well?
I'm glad you asked that question, because yes, that's one of the key sort of things that we've identified. So yeah, I should say this tool, although it's had multiple versions, its current iteration is only like a month old. So as you can see, there are some like stuff that is a little bit that we still need to QA, but we have a really strong vision of like where we would like this tool to go. And what you've just suggested there is one of our key sort of roadmap features, which we're calling the movement data library. So,
like that. Yes.
It's good. It's good branding. So yeah, right now, obviously, people can add their own data if they've got it. However, we would like, obviously, we're in a unique position to be able to connect not only organizers, but organizers like organizer data. So if the organization that we're working with, who's collated this trans-friendly GP map or data, we could create a feature within the tool which requests that they make this sort of a publicly available data set within the movement data library. So let's imagine in this drop down, you can select from your existing collection, you can add single markers, but maybe there was another option, which is like the movement data library, which has, maybe this data set. We're also looking at potentially providing very like up-to-date polling data, census data, deprivation data, and just like, and also like just data that organizations maybe don't have access to but are requesting, and maybe are even like paywalled. Maybe there's a way we can like pull resources to secure that data, provide it on our platform, obviously given that it's legal and okay to do that, and provide all of this interesting data that can inform the strategy via a click of a button. And then I guess that kind of data would probably look something like this. So in this boundaries panel, I've selected the Westminster constituencies shapes, which is creating these outlines, and then I can choose to fill in those shape with as an option member count. So what we're going to see is, I guess this whole time when I've been using the term choropleth, what I mean is, I don't even know if I'm actually saying that word right.
No, it is the right word, and it is the right thing. The chloropleth map is a sort of map that is divided by some kind of boundaries, and then those sections are coloured according to some criteria. We often see versions of chloropleth maps where the sections are darker or lighter, depending on the intensity of the thing. But this map all appears to be mostly the same colour. Is that because the data set is quite small, maybe?
Yes. So in this selection that I've made, what I've as the option is member count. So what this is doing is looking at what my members' data source is,
yes,
and is filling it based off of the sort of member density within that area. So it seems like, looking at the legend, there's a maximum of two. Which is which is in Whitney, and a couple of other constituencies.
But again, you can imagine how powerful this tool would get if you had a database with thousands of members in. Suddenly you would really start to see those hot spots where potentially you could sort of target for action and stuff.
Exactly.
And places where you might want to focus on sort of getting more people involved as well. Yeah.
I guess like one thing here that kind of demonstrates the movement data library is that we do have a vote share data set that you can select from. So we can see that, I guess I think this might be this is showing the vote share, right? So and I'm using the sequential color scheme. So where you see more blue is where obviously there is a higher vote share with Conservatives, and then you can also you can choose these other parties green, and reform, obviously, and then you have some other. So yeah, I guess that gives like that's one of the data sets, like vote share, but we want to be able to give you even more data from different sources, and more, maybe even like I mentioned, contemporary polling data, so you can be very reactive and respond to what's happening.
You meant. Oh, sorry, Sean. Did you have a question?
Well, one of our members in chat is asking about: is it possible for users to define boundaries, and if so, could you demonstrate what that looks like?
So, if by boundaries you mean, so yeah, I guess so. Within boundaries, we have we have sort of selections that you can make from different political boundaries. So right now we have Westminster constituencies.
Yeah, I see. So these are predefined within the. So if someone wanted to, it wouldn't be possible for a user to define the boundaries of local authorities, for instance. That would need to be done sort of more internally by your team, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they've got the data and it's clean, please, like, you can send that over and we'll add it. I think the challenge we've had is to make it when we are choosing like the shapes, essentially, to make sure that the data is like correct and compatible with how we're It was something that we considered, like, should users be able to upload their own custom boundaries, but because of, I guess, the technology and there's certain like requirements, and ironically the shape of the data has to fit how we've built our stuff in the back end, essentially. So I guess the answer is no.
We had the same issue on Place, Carl. Honestly, you don't realize, you think of boundaries as being something quite fixed until you start working with boundary data, and then you find it changes about every 2 to 4 years. And it was even stupid stuff like, you know, we were dealing with someone in the south of England and they just weren't in Bournemouth anymore, and we called it that. And we found all these funny situations too, where like, you know, there's a place called Moston Miners Benefit that had a very strong Moston identity, and the redistricting happened and it wasn't in Moston anymore. But like, we're not going to tell someone who lives there that it's not in Moston. It is to them. And I think like that's, especially where I live, it's always been on the edge of all this redistricting. And it's we had this question in Place, Cal, a lot, where it would be like, you know, where people identify as their neighborhood is often doesn't exist. And we even found, I'm not going to say the name of it, but we even found this one place that was called New Another Place. And we found very late into the other process that basically New Another Place referred to the white part. And they were using not New Another Place to refer to the not white part. And it was like, oh my God, how do we even navigate this in the name of the project, which now has New That Place in the title? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will say, especially with the constituencies and how like sort of the reshaping of some of them is one of the things which makes me glad I'm on like the product design side rather than the product development side, because it's very, as you can imagine, it is a technical challenge to try and make data from previous constituency shapes fit within the current one.
You've got, at the moment, we saw Westminster constituencies, because I can imagine, depending on the nature of the type of organization that you are working with, you know, there are other boundaries, like you've got UK regions then, but I'm feeling like counties might be useful, council areas might be useful. Sure. But yeah, I don't envy you, and you know, it would obviously be lovely at some point if the tool had way more boundary sets, but I imagine that's a work in progress.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, when I mentioned the movement data library, it's kind of the two things. There's like
part of that.
There's the data itself, but then there's also the data shapes, and we also want to look into how like certain data sets, right, might have data at a particular level. So let's say maybe at a small levels, we don't currently have it here, but with, let's say, ward level, so a constituency is broken down to like several wards, and we want to make sure that if you select a data set which has data, let's say deprivation data for different wards, if you were to select constituency, it's able to like aggregate or interpolate that data and show you a constituency sort of version of that data, or calculate it basically if it's not already in the data set. So there's stuff that we really want to do as part of this movement data library.
It kind of forgive me if I've misremembered this, but are you guys in a similar building or nearby to London Renters Union? I feel like you guys are in the same office block or something. And for anyone who hasn't encountered London Renters Union, they're what they sound like. It's a renters union for people who live in London, and that's always struck me as the kind of organisation for which a tool like this would be very powerful on that kind of hyper local level. Being able to understand, if you zoom right in on London, where members are within that city, because I'm a member of London Renters Union, and there are times where they're saying, okay, someone is being evicted from their flat today, and we want people to come out and in support of them, and to protest this. And there you go, you've zoomed right in, and you can see the sort of the regions here. And London Renters Union seems like the type of organisation for which a tool like this could be really powerful. And I guess I was sort of wondering, and maybe this is putting you on the spot and you won't necessarily be able to think of any off the top of your head, but you talked about unions already, right? You talked about like the union for game workers, and I'm talking about a renters union. What other types of organizations, not necessarily specific names, maybe types of organizations you don't yet have on this tool, do you think that Mapped could be really powerful for?
So I guess it's interesting. So I guess one of them could potentially be, I guess to be explicit, like political like organizations. We obviously have the May elections coming up, and as we've seen with like the Mamdani campaign, and obviously like the people power that have like people who have become engaged with, the Green Party or your party. There's a lot of sort of people interested in going out and potentially like canvassing. So like I guess using this tool as a form of like organizing canvassing or canvassers to go out and target particular areas, I think that could be kind of an interesting use case, one that we haven't. We're in the process of internally discussing as a team whether the role that we want to play, and whether this is a tool that we can provide to the Green Party or your party to help them strategize and
I guess the perilous thing with that is, what if some other parties that we might not like want to use this tool, but devil's advocate maybe, because I agree with you. I think it's a really powerful tool for this purpose, and I would love to see it used.
Oh, don't worry. They probably have much, much, much better tools that we never get to see, and people paid six-figure salaries to do the data analysis. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Fair enough.
It is. It's interesting. It is a live discussion we're having as a team, because technically our tool is open sourced in that people can access the code. I guess the thing they can't access obviously is the data, because as we've established, they kind of like is separate. And so in theory, I guess if someone was, a reform member wanting to like organize themselves, they could run their own instance of this, and they could connect their own data. But I think, like Kim mentioned, I'm pretty sure they probably already have access.
Because just to say what the commercial tools are like for this, right? Like there's tools like Tableau, which is kind of it's one of those everything tools, and you could use it to make this kind of visualization but it's kind of like, that's the thing that costs like £1,000 per month per license per user or something. And I think the real joy for me of tools like this is they just take, they're sort of taking a very specific use case and just making that bit. There's one called, I think Power BI does this too, that I can't believe that's the real name of a piece of software. But if you're an organization that actually has funding because you're funded by fascists, then you will probably have access to these tools because they're not a big expense for you. So I think there's just something to be said for just like making this kind of data analysis possible without having to shell out however much a Tableau license is or however much a thing is. And then even if you have it, I find those tools very difficult to use. And I say that as someone who spent a lot of time with data.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Kim, because to do a callback to an earlier question in terms of when you asked, like, why did we do this? The other thing to say, yeah, although the CRM tools obviously are more about data management and have like very limited mapping capability, the like mapping tools online, specifically like ArcGIS tools, are like extremely expensive for some reason, and obviously the organizers that we're working with are mostly like grassroots, limited resources. And I mean, yeah, I should also mention that Mapped is completely free to use. You don't have to pay to access the tool. It's closed in that you have to sign up to the waiting list. So which you can do. Anyone in chat who wants to start using this, if you go on mapped.tools, you can register for an account. But it's also, I guess there's kind of like an economics to this tool as well, in that we're trying to socialize the costs of resourcing this. We're trying to bring in philanthropic funders. We're trying to I mean, the most innovative thing I think we've got is like how we approach building features. Like a particular organization, like I mentioned, Hope Not Hate, basically paid for this Cora Plething tool, and now it has any organizer who has access to Map can benefit from that. So it's kind of like an ecosystem to the tool, which I think is really interesting. And we're not like gatekeeping, and we're not trying to. I guess I'm saying we're like terrible capitalists, because we're not charging multiple people in the same amount that we charge that Hope Not Hate paid for to use the same thing. It's like
it's collective benefit, right? It's you know, their contribution of that sort of developing that feature is a benefit to everyone, and hopefully all the type of people who would want to use this tool would celebrate that, right? Exactly. I do have a sort of question related to that, because as a lecturer in data viz, I'm constantly telling my students that the power of making data tangible, right? And how it can affect change. I'm always like, you know, why is what you're doing important? How are you going to affect change with the work that you're doing? And this is like a designer to designer question. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit more about the sort of design decisions that you've made when it comes to Map, like making it as visually accessible and impactful as you possibly can, which you've obviously put a lot of thought into.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good question. I think I would say, from my own point of view, as one of the two product designers working on this, I think when it comes to product design, the constant balance that we kind of have to make is whether we provide something complex and has a wide range of like functionality, but requires like a higher level of like sort of a bigger barrier to like learning something, versus simplifying something so it's very accessible and easy, but as a part of that, maybe limiting like a feature. So I guess I can give an example of like one of the ways we've kind of managed to balance those two things is basically create like what we're calling a graduated experience. So within boundaries, like we have these two selections, which are quite simple. I guess three if you click on the legend and choose the color. But you choose the shape, and then you choose a sort of data thing to fill the shape in. But we also have this button called Advanced Settings, where if you are more inclined to data visualization and you want it to be more complex calculation, then you have these extra options, which to maybe the average map user, this might be a little bit intimidating. It might be a little bit confusing.
This is Tableau land to me.
Yeah, I think that's with data visualization. It is like it does get quite complicated. I mean, I'm sometimes complimented. Sometimes, yeah, I get confused by like, I work with like data visualization. I know the patterns, but yeah, so it can get tricky. And
well, I think it's nice the way you've sort of not hidden it exactly because it is accessible, but like, yeah, someone might be daunted if they opened up the tool and they saw all of those settings, but someone who is looking for more can find it.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's kind of all is kind of, it's quite neat because all of this selection is basically a preset of making selections here. So it's kind of like a technical way we've managed to like provide a good like user experience. And then in terms of like other things, it's interesting because I'm showing you this, which is the current version of Mapped, but in my head I have like the latest designs of ways we're already like optimizing the tool, and like we want to look into like consolidating maybe maybe I can do some like live user testing. But one of the things we've noticed is that we've kind of made this distinction between members and markers, right? And what maybe feels better to our users is to have a consolidated one option called just markers, because members are technically markers, and then you can add, so essentially sample members would be within markers. Markers wouldn't have a predefined color. You could then add data sources or single markers, and then choose the color of them. So it feels like we've kind of made this distinction because it was kind of under the assumption that obviously members, organizations work with members, they have their own members, so it maybe is good to highlight that. But it can also create this confusion because these two are basically the same thing, that they're points on a map. This is a different thing, which is areas, and this is a different thing called boundaries, but these two are quite similar. So we can really, we're constantly like testing and trying to work out like better design solutions.
I guess my comment on that, if we are doing live user testing, is that I agree with you. They are the same type of data, and crucially, something I was going to sort of compliment you on is that they are displayed in the same way, because I like the way, obviously, that, you know, you're bound by some conventions, right? Like lines and fonts and shapes, but those sort of the individual points and then those sort of gradiented circles, you use that same style to display both members and markers, which essentially does mean that they're the same kind of data. The thing I would say is that members is very clear and easy to understand. Anyone using this tool will be like, oh yeah, that's where my members live. Markers is vaguer, and someone new to the tool might be like, what's a marker? So it's almost like workshopping. If you were going to combine them, I would be like, how would you workshop what that word markers is? You know, even saying data sets might be clearer, but I know that's not right because the others are technically data sets as well. But sort of individual things. I don't know what the word you want is that's not markers, right? But I just think I can imagine a new user to this tool who's not particularly tech savvy finding it quite useful to see very clearly that section that's called members, right?
Yes. I mean, so you mentioned something interesting there, which was like the term like individual. And one of the design select decisions with solutions we're potentially looking into is to show individual markers as like one dot, and then for the collections to show like multiple dots to tell the user like, oh, these are this is a collection of
a cluster.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe we should get you as a part of the design QA cohort.
I would love to chat. We will do this separately, but yeah, I would definitely love to get involved, potentially get our students involved as well, because it's such an interesting challenge that you have here. Can
I segue into so I've got a little section for me to ask about, because I think as I might have noted earlier, I'm kind of a skeptic of maps. I think I find them useful sometimes, and I think like really I just need to dig in and have a play with this tool. I think maybe the key phrase that's come up for me is, because I think like, you know, I've tried projects before too of making like data libraries, notably around like police violence and just trying to standardize it. But there becomes a point where I'm like, well, where are our community data librarians, right? Who are they? And where are the community data libraries? And I think something I find really bewildering with the state of the world right now is just everything's been computerized. Everyone does all our admin. It's hell. So basically we're all doing things that used to require jobs. But part of that is there just feels like there's nowhere you can go to like just get help about information. So everyone's struggling with this. I've thought before about the idea of like, what would it look like to almost have like neighborhood tourist offices where you can go and ask a question about what's going on in your neighborhood? So I don't know. I'm curious if you have any thoughts of this, because with our Place Cookout tool, we put a lot of focus on the people who are like curating this information as like an ongoing thing, and I suppose now I'm starting to think of those as like these community data librarians. Because like I've been an organizer all my life, and I think I've never had a list of members who've come to my group, but I know where the community centers are. I'm just getting on with stuff, and then the challenge becomes like, well, how do I disseminate all this right now? Or how do I tell people about it? Or how do we start working together? And often the barriers to that are just this lack of this, like I say, it's like we're all on our laptops and theoretically we have more information than ever, but this specific job of like curating it is just not really happening. So, I mean, that was kind of a long-winded statement, but I suppose I'm just like, I like this concept of the community data library, but I'm more now thinking towards like do you have any thoughts on what a future looks like where we sort of like build up and work towards this world where like the curation of community data is like an important thing that we put resource into and support and see as like an important thing that we need to have to live like the lives we want to live? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a big question. It's a big challenge. I will say, I think there are people, thankfully, that are doing this work. People we share a building with, specifically, I'm thinking of like the Movement Research Unit, and like maybe a few others who definitely recognize the value of like data, and the importance of, like I mentioned, like keeping it maintained, keeping it clean, and being able to combine it with what I guess what our role is, which is to interface that data. I think I think it's definitely it's super important. I think we also maybe want to like in somehow empower, and maybe even look into like how we can resource and connect people and organizers who have data or data needs, and provide them with like the necessary resources they need to make use of that. I think the other thing you mentioned is like having access to data. So I think one other thing to mention is like one of the features that I haven't mentioned yet is public maps. So obviously everything I'm showing you right now is private, and that like is only visible to the user. There is kind of a collaborative feature we're potentially going to look at, which is allowing organizations to share maps whilst maintaining like GDPR and then like anonymizing any like member data essentially. So because like a lot of grassroots organizations obviously work in like a small scale, right? And it's quite powerful to have a tool which allows you to sync up your strategies with other sort of similar smaller organizations maybe, and maybe work on shared strategies. So you could have like a strategy or a map that you've created which reflects a strategy that you would like to collaborate with on with another like organization, and so we can work on a shared map together and like consolidate resources and make smart sort of decisions together. And then that obviously that could be two organizations, that could be like multiple. You can really like scale that up. But the other thing is, so that's all within like the private maps domain. The other thing we want to look at doing, specifically with the trans-friendly GP dataset that we see here, we want this to be a publicly accessible tool that anyone sort of wanting this information can have access to, and people who have similar data sets, like they have like maybe forms, or they have their organization has a way of like capturing this data and maintaining it, but they have no way to sort of interface it to people who might make use of this data. And so one of the things we want to look into doing is like creating a version of Mapped, or like having a feature within Mapped, which is public maps, where you can just take your data, put it on a map, hit publish, and it will show you the list, like a list of the records in your data set with a map alongside it. Maybe you type in your postcode, and it rearranges, it zooms to that location on the map, and it shows you the data in order in order of proximity to the postcode that you've provided. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I've just used that to plug
I
a
think you
feature
said
that we're
something
working
there
with.
that was really key to me, which is about like this sort of de-siloing. So we talked a lot about this in GFSE, how everyone's working in parallel. But yeah, every group that starts up has exactly the same issue, right? They start an organization. I think that's what I was trying to get at before. You start an organization, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we should really be getting people's email addresses. And you're trying that, and no one wants to give out their email address, but they'll happily follow you on Meta on like Instagram or something, but like every organization has it. And I was in one project where I think they tried to make like community membership cards so that like the small little projects could benefit from kind of like a shared membership, but it didn't really work. It was just too complicated. But it feels to me like if we've got any hope on the left, it's like, you know, we've got to find ways to like work together, especially where there's overlap. So like, you know, there's another group called Resilience Web who've made a similar tool to us, and it's like, well, we've both got lists of information about community groups, and they're both good. So like, you know, we don't have to be in competition, but what does that look like? And I think with this list, it's really interesting because it's like, you know, let's say this list is maintained by, say, like Mermaids or whoever. Like, they only know so much. And because trans people are such a small percentage of the population, a lot of the times it's going to be like n=1 or n=2 for these judgments. And like, then maybe the LGBT Foundation publishes one too. And then maybe there's the one in my little trans group chat. And I think for me, it's like, I think creating that sense of plurality and creating a bit of a sense of like, you know, come on, can we like pool our efforts here so that we can start seeing these as like problems that are worth resolving collectively, if that makes sense, and not just like, oh, you know, not just a thing that's done over there. Because yeah, I'm like processing as we think, but I think this like crossover part is almost as interesting to me as like the neatness of any one map. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the exciting thing about this tool for me as well, is this ability to layer the different data sets, everything from the, well, to use your technical terms, the boundaries, the areas, the markers, the members, right? Stacking those things on top of each other is where the power of the tool comes in, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think in terms of what you mentioned there, Kim, in terms of like, yeah, that's the idea of like pooling together resources. Like you mentioned, the right are very well resourced. Like they have access to, yeah, and like pools of money which they can use to organize to meet their political objectives. We on the left, obviously, we definitely don't have the same access to those resources, and so one of the ways we go about circumventing that is by coming up with technologies, coming up with solutions in which we share resources and we benefit collectively. Yeah.
So you mentioned in brief earlier, for anyone in the chat or watching this back who is starting to think like, oh, I need this. Do you want to do a little refresher on how how people can get or do we have any, is there anything else you'd like to show us, or is there anything else that before we sort of move on to that?
I guess no, I think that's everything for the demo. I will say, yeah, like I mentioned, it's right now it's registration only. I think it's a mixture of making sure like we have, you know, progressive actors using this tool, but also I think like a technical side of just making sure we don't have we sort of incrementally increase our users. If you visit mapped.tools, you'll see a link to register to become a user for Mapped. And if you're really excited about this tool, we will be launching a supporters network where you'll have the ability to provide us with the thing that we're missing. Obviously, right now, like I mentioned, with a lot of people on the left, is the resource, and we have all these ideas about how we want to extend the functionality of this map that we talked about the movement data library, we talked about public maps and like collaborative features. We obviously need money to do that. We've got again, we're fortunate in that we have good relationships with funders, but yeah, I think we also want to look into like crowdfunding as a revenue stream. So at a certain point, if you visit mapped.tools/support, you will be able to sign up and become a supporter of Mapped, and we have a few perks. One is you will have access to the Discord channel where we will be we'll be doing some like user testing on the fly there, as well as you'll also have access to the staging link where we have early access to features like public maps. Like public maps is something that we're sort of working on right now, and you'll be able to see and access that before anyone else. Obviously, it's in staging for a reason, so it might not work exactly how it should, but you'll have access to that. And we'll be doing quarterly like meetups essentially with like the map community where we'll show everyone what we've been working on. You'll have an opportunity to feed into like future features within the roadmap, and yeah, if you're excited about what you're seeing here today, please visit that link at some point. We tried to make it ready for today, but we haven't managed to. But yeah,
soon, very soon, we'll share it.
That sounds very exciting. So at the moment, it's a free tool, but it is a waiting list just so you don't overload yourself with new users.
We've got a question in the chat.
Yes, Twitchy Robin asks, you might have already said this, but do you have to import data into the tool, or does it work dynamically with a range of databases and or spreadsheets?
I can maybe actually show you. So yeah, you have the data sources part of Mapped, and all you have to do is click add new, you give it a name, and then you give it a type, which helps us just sort of represent that data potentially in certain ways.
Ooh, I like that.
But you also have the ability to choose the source of the data. So like I mentioned, these are the current integrations we have. If you select any of the CRMs, there's obviously like live synced. So every time you get a new member in your CRM via sign up, it will appear on Mapped as well. But if you also wanted to just upload static content, you can just upload the CSV. There's a few steps for using the CRM tools, so like Airtable, you have to provide base ID. There's some help on how you do that. We also have a documentation part of our website which gives you instructions on how to go about that. So you should be able to do that. And obviously, if you have any issues, reach out to us and we can support that process. Does that answer the question?
Yep, it looks like it does. So as Mapped grows and gets more users, it will be possible for, like, let's say an organization happens to have and wishes to donate the postcodes for all the train stations in the country. Are they able to say, make this public to everyone, and then every other user has access to click down and be like, here's all the people who have access to the train network?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, it's just a case of like reaching out to us. If anyone has like an access to a data set which they feel like could be very useful to other organizers and can see being a part of the movement data library, then I guess at the very least you can use that data for your own individual map, which is great.
Yeah.
But then you can also reach out to us. I think maybe we should also, again, doing some live QA, have a button where you can submit your own data
I have a small question on this. We should wrap up, but I have another small question, which is, should that kind of data live on a project like OpenStreetMap in the first instance, probably, and then get filtered out by maps? I never really think about OpenStreetMap too much, but like I feel like I should. So as much as common for me as anything else.
Yeah, potentially. I'm the design person rather than the technical one. So maybe.
Because it's interesting, like OpenStreetMap, theoretically anyone can put any data they want on that, but I
Right.
never think to put events on it, which are a thing that happens at places. So it's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
That was a slightly strange final note. I wish we'd final noted on the final
No,
note.
let's re-final note to
Final
my.
note.
I think an exciting aspect of that is that the organisations that you're going to want to work with presumably are going to be more ideologically aligned with the idea of open sourcing some of their data so that it helps other people. There are certain things, I gave the example of train stations, but there's lots of data that's useful to know about the UK that I'm sure has been compiled time and time again by different organisations. Loads of people need to know where the libraries are, where community centres are. The more that Mapped grows, I could imagine there's almost a mild Wikipedia-like effect of people are contributing into a shared knowledge that is then visualized and made useful. And I think that's a really exciting aspect about the tool, who you're working with, and what the function of it is.
And I'm excited as. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, the maintainer of the database of train stations sounds like the most GFSC Discord job I've ever heard of.
Well, I was just thinking about the fact that I love this idea of this like data library, right? And the fact that ultimately at the moment, you just have one big drop down, but there's going to come a point where it's going to be like transit data, health data, political data. You're going to have to start thinking about how the data is categorized and making that more navigable, which is not necessary at the moment. And that feels to me like a really exciting design challenge for the future, hopefully, if this library does grow.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we've in our sort of Figma prototype of where we imagine what this movement data library is, it is like a modal that opens up, and literally we have those categories already.
Amazing.
So we're already like sort of fantasizing about this future where we have like this breadth of I guess it's interesting to hear like you say open source data. I guess because technically it's closed in the sense that if you have access to Mapped, you'll be able to add it to our tool. I mean, if people maintaining the data also want to provide it, in other, I guess maybe that's why you were referencing like OpenStreetMap. If there was like other tools in which you can share.
I think that's what I'm getting at. I think for me, the idea that, because the joy of the internet is it's decentralized, and I think always our first instinct is to centralize, because that's like the instinct that gets bred into us by living in capitalism. But actually, like, my feeling on this is much more like, what does it look like if what we're growing isn't like one centralized thing, but more we're supporting each other to build interoperable things that then are maintained in a place that's then closer to that thing being fixed. Because I think that underlying it, that's why the internet works. But I think it's quite counterintuitive to think in that way, because we are so used to thinking in product terms. But like, I'm interested in like what it would be like to start, having the external data directly linked to where that data lives. So if it's OpenStreetMap data, it lives in OpenStreetMap and I can pull it in, or if it's boundary data, it lives on the ONS website and I can pull that in, or if it's weather data, it lives on the, it still live. I mean, I think that sounds exciting to me, but it's very hard to think about. It's the sort of thing that APIs were meant to make easy, but don't seem to have made easy, right?
No, I think for sure, like, obviously, like, our product ethos, again, we ultimately, what we're doing this for is to empower specifically progressive organizers to, bring about like a better world. And our approach to this is to take this data and create an interface or an experience where you can get the most out of it. If there are other tools out there, like if OpenStreetMap, let's say, was to innovate and maybe create a similar interface to us, or like provide these like solutions, then that's great. Like, that's what we want ultimately. So I guess if there's data within our movement library, I think it should be open. It should be available to in different platforms, as long as it is forwarding the mission, let's say.
Well, if there's no more questions from chat, I think I'm excited to see how the project develops. I've really enjoyed learning more about it and seeing how it would work in practice. I'm tempted to sign up to the waiting list. I'm just a private individual with no data, but it would be lovely to click around in there. Is there any final notes that anyone wants to add, or Arbnor, anything that you think you would like to make sure was said to complete the record before we wrap up?
I can't think of anything. I guess I just want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to share this with you and chat. And yeah, thanks for the questions as well. It's interesting. It's like my first time talking about it like publicly in this way, and there's also a live, which is this added pressure. So hopefully I've done a good job. I'll probably go back and watch it and be like, why did I say that? Why didn't I say that? But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
It's been great. Thank you.
You were thrown in the deep end and you swam superbly. Thank you very much for coming and speaking with us this evening. Thank you to Emma and Kim for coming along.
I need a little final note. Oh, sorry. Were you going to segue me into a final note? Or...
Well, now I don't need to.
Is that the same? I was just going to say, yeah, if people want to support more streams like this, we do not have a good relationship with funders. And our direct donations are really... We're growing slowly, but the last couple of months have been quiet, partly because I've run out of energy to publish every week. And to be honest, the main thing is just when you start posting on Instagram, I hate how good Instagram is for getting stuff out there. But anyway, please consider supporting us. We are currently all working on this as volunteers, so it is very nice to have support. Although I think half the people in chat are supporters already, so this is probably a little bit silly. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I think also if people have ideas of streams they would like us to do, we're very up for hearing from the community. If people think they would like to come on this stream and they have something to present, then that's nice too. I think we've done 3 of these streams now, and I think we're going to take a break for December. We're going to go quiet in December, do a bit of recharging, and I think in the new year, it will be time to kind of review, think about what worked this year, what didn't, what we want to do next, what's sustainable, what isn't. So any feedback is greatly appreciated. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Hopefully we will see you all on the website, in the Discord, in future live streams. Thank you again to our guest and our panel. I've been Sean Morley, hosting this. And from all of us, goodbye and be well.